Guess we'll get started. Andrew, if you don't mind watching the waiting room and letting people in. Hello, and thank you all for coming to the first public meeting for First Street Reconstruction Project. I'm Patrick Durkis with the City of Bloomington. We'll be managing the design of the project for the city. I have closed captioning turned on, which is a Zoom provided feature, so it might not always be perfect, as I just see there. I'll start recording the meeting now. A quick overview of Zoom, so everyone's familiar with how to use it. Starting in the bottom left-hand corner of the Zoom window is the video and microphone on-off options. We ask that everyone but the presenters remain muted. To the right of that button is the participants button, which will open a sidebar that allows you to raise your hand. I ask that you use this feature only if you're unable to use the chat feature and would like to speak. Continuing to the right of the participants button, you'll see a chat button that will bring up a sidebar for the chat. We ask that you use this feature to communicate with us during the presentation. You can send the chat to everyone, or you can send it directly to me, Patrick Durkis. When we reach the question portion of the meeting, I'll read questions and ask the presenters to respond. When lots of questions come in at once, it can be hard to keep track, so please try to send them in slowly. Also, as we reach the end, if you feel your question was missed, please send it again. There's a Google form that we'll use to take public input on this project. I'm placing a link to the form in the chat now and sending it to everyone. The link can also be found on the project website. We ask that you provide your feedback in the next 2 weeks, so there's time to incorporate the input into the design. Moving on to the project. The project will reconstruct First Street from just west of Fairview to College Ave. The reconstruction will incorporate the new streets proposed in the hospital redevelopment master plan and will coordinate closely with the Phase 1 East project, which is bound east-west by Rogers and the B line, north-south by 1st and 2nd Street. It's anticipated the Phase 1 East project will start construction early 2022. This project, the First Street reconstruction, is supported by $2.9 million in federal funding for construction, and TIF funds will be used for the design, right-of-way acquisition, construction inspection, and the 20% local match for the federal funds. I'll now turn this over to the project designers to get into the detailed parts of the design.
Thanks, Patrick. Do you have control of the slideshow or do I?
I do. If you wanted to present it, you could take over.
No, that's fine. I'll just have you advance the slides as I need them.
Let me know when you need it.
All right. Go ahead and go to the next one. Just a quick get to know us, the people that are going to be kind of presenting today. Myself, Josh Eisenhower, I work for VS Engineering. We're based out of Indy, but we also have an office here in Bloomington, which is where I'm located. Our office is actually only just a few blocks away from this project, so it's a very good location. I'm supported also today by Alyssa Prezo, who's with Context Design. They are a landscape architect firm that is a subconsultant to VS on this project. They're also doing the preliminary layout of all the streetscape items. So Alyssa is going to do most of the talking today when we get into the nuts and bolts of everything, but I'll just give a quick overview here at the beginning. And then also we have Andrew and Patrick with City of Bloomington Engineering Department. They will be available for answering any city-specific questions, but any project and design specific questions will be fielded by Alyssa and myself. Go ahead and go to the next one. So here's just kind of a quick agenda of what we're going to cover. We're going to do a quick overview of the project, and then we'll go through what our proposed improvements are at this point. Keep in mind that these are not set yet. This is just kind of our draft first round of proposed improvements. That's why we're having this meeting. We want to get input from you, find out if you like what we have, don't like what we have, just get some public input on how we're going to move forward from where we're starting right now. And then we've got a couple pointed questions, just kind of spur some talking points and get a little bit more information. We'll do a quick overview of the schedule and what the next steps will be, and then we'll have a general discussion and answer any questions that come up throughout the presentation. All right, go ahead. So this is just kind of an overview of the whole project area. You can see that shaded area is the hospital redevelopment area. This is the part that has been talked about quite a bit lately in city meetings, public meetings, what's going to be done with this whole area here. And then you can see the project start. We show it a little bit farther west than what Fairview is. The exact limits, western limits of this project will be based on funding and costs. Once we get a little bit farther in design, we'll start developing more detailed cost estimates, and that will help us get to the limits that we need in order to make sure that we utilize all of the federal funding that's been allocated for this project. And then you can see the end project is down by College Avenue. We'll be tying into some work that was done at that intersection previously, some newer sidewalks that we could see during our survey, but we'll also be replacing the existing signal equipment there. It's a little bit outdated. The city's kind of moving forward with a lot of their signal equipment. So that whole signal will be replaced, pretty much look the same as it does now once it's done, just newer, more streamlined equipment. And we'll tie that in with the rest of the corridor timing that runs up and down College Avenue. And then you see at the far left side of that picture, there's a possible trail connection. This is something that will be added in if funding allows, but the thought behind that is to connect this corridor along First Street that will be very pedestrian and bike friendly over to a future and existing trail routes and sidewalk routes along Patterson Drive. So that hasn't been completely determined yet, but it is a possibility to add into this project. Go ahead and go on. So this is just kind of an overview of the hospital redevelopment site. You can see First Street labeled there, kind of going at an angle almost through the middle there. So First Street's mostly what we're talking about today, but it does tie in with the rest of this redevelopment project. So we're going to make sure that everybody kind of sees how it all ties together and see what's coming. The phase one project that Patrick spoke about earlier is kind of in the top right corner where Madison Street, the new Greenway, that area kind of in there is the other project that's going to be coming along along with this First Street project. All right, can move along. So these are kind of high-level project considerations. These considerations are all set in place mostly out of a desire to keep traffic speeds low, keep safety aspects in mind for pedestrians and bicycles and non-motorized transportation. So we'll just kind of do a quick little run through of these. We're shooting for 10-foot lane widths. Just, the narrow lane widths tend to make cars drive a little bit slower. People are a little bit more cautious when they don't have as wide roads. This is a neighborhood greenway in the new transportation plan for the city. So we're looking at a shared road, which basically just means that you're going to have cars and bicycles on the road at the same time. Not necessarily shared lanes, but it's a road that's designed for all uses. We want to put some terraces in there so that we can get some tree plantings, have some shade on the sidewalks, maybe some other landscapings, really tie this in as a very green friendly type of space. We'll have sidewalks on both sides. Anyone who's been out on First Street now knows that there aren't sidewalks on both sides through this stretch. So that's a big thing. We wanted to add at least 5-foot sidewalks on both sides, give people a good walking area, make it very pedestrian friendly. As I said, the focus on this is speed control and safety. We'll go into a few more of the intricate details, not intricate details, but a little bit more of the details on options that we can use to maintain that speed control and improve the safety. First Street is an ambulance route, so we had to keep that in mind as we're going through design. The city requires a 12-foot passing area for any ambulance routes, so we had to kind of balance some safety and some narrowed lanes with also allowing space for ambulances to be able to pass stopped vehicles. This will complement the hospital site redevelopment. The intent is not to make it an extension of the redevelopment site, but so that they complement each other, both look well together. You know, we don't want First Street to stand out and be completely different, but we don't want it to be exactly the same either. As I said, the exact limits are going to be based on cost. Right now, they're at roughly Euclid Avenue down to College Avenue, but they could change, you know, based on cost. There will be utility improvements done as part of this project. That includes water, sanitary sewer, and storm sewer. The storm sewer will be replaced. Whatever the reconstruction limits are for this project will be the storm sewer. And we're working with City of Bloomington Utilities to determine the extents of the water and sanitary replacement. Those aren't set in stone at this time. We're still coordinating and looking at the age of the current facilities and what needs to be replaced, and, you know, sizing and things like that. We're also looking at converting Fairview Street from one-way to a two-way traffic road. Currently, it's one-way due to site distance. There's a hill and a retaining wall there at Fairview Street that limits the site distance, so that's why it's been a one-way. We're looking to improve that hill and remove some of the other site distance issues so that Fairview can be utilized as a two-way street instead of a one-way street. And then again, the upgraded signal at First Street and College Avenue, all new, everything. We may be able to reuse some of the existing facilities there, but for the most part, we'll plan to replace that all with newer, more upgraded equipment that meets the current standards. All right. And now I will hand it over to Alyssa, and she can go over the proposed improvements in a little bit more detail.
Thanks, Josh. Some of the roads that you see incorporated in here are future roads based on the hospital master plan. So those will be coming online as this property gets redeveloped, and we're making sure that we're planning for those as we create this master plan for the First Street. So you can see this is the block between Maple and Fairview. And in this condition, we are showing in the white will be the sidewalks in the plan on both sides of the street. The light green is indicating any lawn or planted area. And then the dark green circles represent trees that can be planted. If it's a large circle, it represents a street tree or a larger shade tree. If it's a smaller green circle, that represents more of an ornamental tree. So like a serviceberry or a Japanese tree lilac. And those are typically there because there's overhead utilities, telephone, electric, whatever it might be. So we don't want to plant anything underneath those utilities, but still get some greenery and edge to the street. As of right now, this is the extent off to Wiley and Euclid in this location of the improvements. And as Josh mentioned, as we know more about how much funding can go how far, we might extend this further west, however far we can make it go. But in this scenario between Wiley and Maple, we would have a median in the street with some trees down the center. Once you get past Maple Street, it transitions into two 10-foot lanes with tree lawns on both sides. And then once you get towards Fairview Street, we add in a median again so that anyone crossing the street can have some protection from bikes and traffic that are on the street at that location. At this intersection, we would also be incorporating a change of pavement. So this is both a visual and a tactile indicator that there's an area where pedestrians and vehicles are in conflict. So everybody needs to be aware of that conflict. And if you could go to the next slide, please, Patrick. So this is a cross section of the very first part of the street. So you can see the median in the middle with the trees on both sides and in the median. This is showing the mountable curb with potentially some pavement in some portions of that median. And this is to accommodate the ambulance route that Josh mentioned earlier. so that if an ambulance is coming down the road, cars are supposed to stop. The ambulance has an opportunity to get around those vehicles that are stopped. This is showing a 5-foot tree lawn on both sides, and then a 6-foot walkway on both sides of the street. And right now, this fits within the current right-of-way that is available. And then the next slide shows the second cross section. Oh, no, not yet. Okay, we'll get there. So this is pretty much a match line, and this goes from the future Jackson Street extension to Rogers Street. Again, we are showing that median coming up to Jackson Street to protect any pedestrian crossing. And it does repeat just on the east side of Jackson with, again, change of the pavement. The rest of the way through Rogers Street, we do not have the median. And we have also bumped out the sidewalk in this look. You can't see my cursor, sorry, but where it says save existing trees on the south side. There are some very significant oak trees that are against that parking lot right now that we thought were of value to save. So in this instance, we have pulled the sidewalk up against the street in order to not get in the root zones of those trees. We do have a change in pavement, again, at the intersection. There's a label that says median. We had more median along the street at one time. It looks like that label got left on, but that is not the intent in this location, especially given that Rogers Street is a pretty big, busy intersection as of today, probably mostly because of the hospital use that's there. That will obviously change in the future, but Rogers Street, I think, is still considered a pretty good throughway through this part of Bloomington. So I think here we're going to have two sections. One is going to be a repeat of that section B that we just saw, if you can flip to the next screen. But then also section A, this is showing the 2 lanes. And this is also showing where we can incorporate some parallel parking along the street. This can serve the different businesses and entities that will be going into the new hospital district, as well as anybody that's trying to connect to the B line, give them a place to park to get down to that system. When we do have the parking, you can see that we do not have the tree lawn. The parking aisle is pretty much taking up where the tree lawn exists, would exist in other portions along the street. And then here's the section B, again, showing that median condition with sidewalks on either side and the tree lawn to separate pedestrians from the drive aisles. And then this is from Madison Street through Morton Street and the Beeline Trail and to the end of our project down by College Avenue. In this situation, you can see here at the end of Madison Street is where we're showing some of that parallel parking and how it does take up the tree lawn. In this instance, we do have some room within the right-of-way to add some trees on the other side of the sidewalk. And again, we have the trees along the north side, which are ornamental, the smaller circle, because of the overhead power lines that are there. As you get closer to the Beeline Trail, this part of the project gets a little tricky. There's a little more topography here than in other locations, and our right-of-way gets a little more crowded. So right before Morton Street to the west, the sidewalk is on against the road on both sides. We do have that median condition so that as folks are crossing the street to get back and forth, they do have that protection again from traffic. We do have the change of the pavement. And what we've done here as well, because of the Beeline Trail, we are recommending that the whole intersection become a traffic table. So the actual pavement would raise up by about 6 inches over the course of about 7 feet. And then it would be flush with the sidewalks and the Beeline Trail. And that one slows down traffic because of that elevation change, and also allows for people using that trail and crossing the street to not have to navigate ramps. So it has a lot of benefits, and it's not something you want to use at a lot of intersections. We felt like this could be a really great option for this particular space. And then once you get east of the Beeline Trail, this is where the Kroger's is. So we've added some more parallel parking to definitely serve the Beeline Trail. And in addition, there is the loading dock for the Kroger's that is at this intersection. So making sure that we provide the navigation and movement space that the trucks need to be able to pull forward back into the loading dock and then pull back out. And having looked at this, I feel glad I am not a truck driver because I don't know how they do that. It is a very, very tight space to get into and out of. So we want to make sure that we can accommodate that without giving up too much of that sidewalk and still making it safe for pedestrians. And then the next slide again shows the same type of sections that you see. Again, the parallel parking on the south side of the street, tree lawn on the north side, and then the sidewalks for pedestrians getting back and forth to the Beeline Trail and beyond. And then again, where the median comes into play, we do have that mountable curb so an ambulance can navigate around any bikes or stopped vehicles, and then the vegetation to help create the edge of that street condition. And then this is where the sidewalk gets a little tight. So we've brought the sidewalk close to the road. We do not have a tree lawn in this condition. On the right-hand side of the apartments where there's a lot of grade change. And in this instance, there might need to be a wall put up just to make sure that we have enough room to incorporate that 6-foot wide sidewalk for the consistency of the pedestrian use on the street edge.
All right, so that's kind of the meat of the project. So these are public input questions. These can be used, I believe they're on the Google Forms. You can use that to input these or any other way you want to let us know what you think. You can put it in the chat today and let us know what you think, but mostly these are discussion points. We do want responses back in a relatively quick fashion so that we could keep this project on schedule. Obviously, since this is the first time most of you are seeing these questions, we don't expect everybody to have great answers right now. But I know a lot of times after you go back and you'll talk to people and think about this, you might come up with more ideas or more thoughts on this. So we'll just, first of all, the extent of the lighting. Right now, we're anticipating putting lighting at all of the intersections, anywhere there's basically crossings for vehicle traffic or bikes and pedestrians. That's all that is planned for right now. But things that we would like to get from the public is, are there any other areas where you think lighting would make the corridor more friendly? And also, if there are any other features that you feel would increase user comfort. They can be along the lines of lighting or any other things that you have noticed throughout Bloomington or other cities, things that other cities have done or that we've done in other places that make it feel safe and comfortable to walk along a street. And then you saw the parking availability that we've got shown in some of the exhibits. We want to know if anyone has any concerns with adding parking along First Street with the new configuration, or if there's any concerns with the parking locations that were shown. We can make the exhibits of the different slide exhibits, we can set those up and the city can make those available on the website. So if anyone wants to look at those after this meeting and take a little more of a deep dive and give us some more input, we can make that happen. And again, as I said in the beginning, the main purpose of this is speed control and safety. We want to slow the vehicles down and make bikers, walkers, runners, all of them feel safe and use this corridor. It is going to be a fairly major connection between the Beeline Trail and the new redevelopment at the hospital site. So we want people to use it. We want it to be safe. We want people to feel comfortable going along this road. So if you see, what purpose do you see, or what would you use this corridor for, aside what we've already mentioned? Do you have any concerns for general safety of non-motorized users? Again, that's runners, walkers, bikers, skateboarders, kids, adults, elderly, the whole population of Bloomington. And then based on what you've seen today, would you walk or run or bike along the proposed roadway? Patrick, I don't know if you want to pause and see if people have mentioned anything in the chat that we need to cover now, or just wait until the end with questions.
There's been nothing in the chat regarding this directly. There was one question regarding our comments related to emergency vehicle and ambulance use of this street. I answered in the chat, but I just want to clarify for everyone. IU Health is building a ambulance dispatch center just west of Euclid on an empty lot there that will remain. I mean, they're building it, should be breaking ground very soon, so it will remain after the hospital leaves. There was another question regarding the schedule for this project and also for the hospital demolition, and we'll get to that slightly later in the presentation. At least schedule for this project, and then demolition we'll talk about when we're talking about the schedule for this project. If anyone has any questions, I haven't received anything else. We can move along to the next slide. Not seeing anything, so we will. You're still welcome to send something in the chat.
Okay, so schedule and next steps. The next step for this project is any public input forms we would like to have back by May 27th. That way we can keep moving with the rest of design, start incorporating those comments or have discussions about the comments if necessary. We're doing a stage 1 submittal, which is approximately 30% design. It's probably going to be fairly similar to what you've seen tonight, unless we've uncovered some big issues. And that is due on June 6th of this year. Basically, that's just a chance for us to coordinate with NDOT and other reviewing agencies, give them a broad strokes overview of what we plan for the project. They get a chance to see our layout, the alignment profile, make sure everything is meeting standards. And also it gives them a chance to provide any of their comments. And then those plans are also used for environmental coordination and the start of the utility coordination. So 30% design may not sound like much, but it's a pretty important milestone when you've got a project of this magnitude and complexity. Following this meeting, there will be another public meeting sometime before our stage 3 submittal. The stage 3 submittal is roughly 90% design, and that will be May of next year. So we've got a year to get this all wrapped up and designed and get all the details worked out. Sounds like a lot of time, but it goes pretty quick, as I'm sure everyone can attest that we're already halfway through May of this year, and it seems like it has gone very quickly. Following stage 3 submittal, we have a final tracing submittal, which is an NDOT requirement. It's basically final design. Everything is done by that point. We have all the details worked out. We have final cost estimates and everything we know. We've already incorporated any comments from the public, from the environmental process, from city officials, and any other comments we've received throughout the project. The project will let in October of 2022, which basically just means that's when it goes out and contractors can bid on it, and they can let us know what their prices are for building it. And then the city will select, or the city and NDOT will select a bidder. With the project letting that late in the year, there probably won't be much construction done in 2022, but they will probably break ground as soon as they possibly can in spring of 2023. But given the size and the complexity of this project, it probably will stretch into 2 construction seasons. So it'll probably be late fall of 2024 before everything is complete for this project. I think that's it for schedule, Patrick.
I'm failing to unmute myself. Andrew, would you mind giving us just a quick rundown of the hospital demolition and movement schedule?
Sure. So, of course, the current hospital site is still active and it's serving as the community's hospital. It's likely going to transfer to the new hospital site later this calendar year, likely late fall. And so it will continue in use at that time. I expect the hospital itself, sometime next year is when that's going to be demolished by the hospital and eventually transfer over to the city to operate and start planning future phases of the redevelopment of that. Patrick earlier mentioned some plans for the first phase of the infrastructure. So that is the block between First and Second and the B line and Rogers. The city is going to be starting the design of that project here pretty shortly. And I expect that area will be starting construction next calendar year. So that will start likely early 2022. And some of those buildings will start being demolished so that some of the new roads in that block can start being constructed. But that's sort of the bigger picture of what we have currently planned and how First Street fits into that.
We had one question in the chat regarding access to homes in the area during construction. For all of our construction projects, we always include that the contractor is responsible for maintaining access to all the residents along the road. So local access only, but maintaining access throughout the entire project. This is a full reconstruction. We are fixing a site distance issue and adding new intersections, which will do some substantial grade changes. So there will be, there will be a lot of driving through a construction site for a period of time, but access will always be maintained to everyone along the project. Paul, I received your photo of the old bridge, 2nd Street Bridge. I didn't know about it, so thank you for sending that, and definitely look at it and see if it is something that could be incorporated into this project. There was a question regarding walking through the project at a future date. That is not something that I believe we have done in the past. But as the design progresses, the plans will be made available, and that'd be a great time to be able to take the plans and see in the field what this project's proposing, and be able to provide comments if you want to. I believe one person asked if they could speak because not wanting to put questions in the chat, so I will allow that now. I don't know if I'll have to unmute you or if you can just unmute yourself. We'll see.
Hi, thanks for having this meeting. And I wanted to just ask 4 or 5 questions. So I just felt like it was kind of a lot to type in the chat. So I hope that's okay. So the first question I have, can everyone hear me, by the way?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, great.
As can I.
Thank you. Okay, so the first question I guess I had was, what is the street typology of this street? Maybe that was mentioned earlier, but I missed it. But could maybe somebody speak to that? What the typology is of this project?
In the latest transportation plan, this is labeled as a neighborhood greenway.
Neighborhood greenway.
Correct.
Okay. So what is the design speed of this street?
So in the transportation plan, a neighborhood greenway would be a target design speed of 15 to 20 miles per hour. However, we have to accommodate the ambulance dispatch that is being constructed, and we'll have to use this route for the foreseeable future.
So I'm sorry, I'm actually looking at the transportation plan now, and I understand neighborhood greenway is a type of bike facility, but neighborhood greenway is not a street typology in the plan. There's shared street, there's neighborhood residential street, there's Main Street, general urban street, but neighborhood greenway is not a street typology.
I will let Andrew answer this. I apologize for misspeaking.
So First Street is, from the street typology, a neighborhood residential street. So a typical, like a residential local street.
Okay.
And then it is identified as a greenway in the bicycle facilities map.
Okay. So I guess I wasn't clear on what types of traffic calming, if any, are being applied here. I mean, you did mention that there was a raised intersection kind of close to the Beeline Trail, but it wasn't really that clear to me about, what other types of traffic calming would be used on this street, if any. Could someone speak to that?
So yeah, I can speak to that. It's the incorporation of the medians at intervals along the street, and the narrow lane widths. So you're being asked to pay attention to the median coming online, and that also the change of the pavements at the intersections will give that visual and tactile. So the material will be a little rougher. So your tires will rumble along those as well. So those are again, keeping in mind that this has to be an ambulance route at the same time. So they might not be as extensive of traffic calming as you would see on other streets that don't have that need. But those are the approaches that we're using right now, but definitely open to your comments of what you feel could be incorporated.
Well, Sure. I guess I don't really feel that a median by itself is a type of traffic calming. I mean, the transportation plan refers to kind of broadly two different types of traffic calming. So there's horizontal elements and there's vertical elements, and horizontal elements are things that reduce the width of the lane, and then vertical elements are, I think, things that you just mentioned, like the pavers or something instead of asphalt, or a raised intersection. So, it seems to me like some kind of horizontal traffic element would actually involve, kind of making motor traffic move side to side. And that's not really what a median does. I mean, it's kind of a hard limit on the width of the travel lane, but it's not really providing any kind of horizontal diversion function. Do you understand what I'm getting at here?
I understand.
Okay. I guess another question I would have is, so given that this is an ambulance route, it also at least seems to partially be a truck route on the eastern edge. I mean, is the intention here for, through motor traffic to be permitted through the entire east-west scope of the project?
Yes, we don't have any locations where we put like a barrier to vehicular traffic. I don't know how that relates to the ambulance service. I would imagine we would have to allow them to go through, and if that would be something that the city would want to incorporate, that vehicular barrier to other types of vehicles.
Okay. And then just one or two other just short questions, I hope.
Sure.
You actually referred to some of the parallel parking on First Street I think you said parallel parking. I think the phrase you used was parallel parking to serve the Beeline Trail. I wasn't really understanding what you meant by that.
So just as, I'll be honest, as I looked on the Google Street View, it appeared to be a very nice day, and there were many people walking down First Street to get what appeared to be the Beeline Trail. So we incorporated some more dense and I guess a larger quantity of parallel parking spaces closer to the Beeline Trail along this stretch of the corridor versus further down. There are still some that are further down, and those would not serve just the Beeline, but also residents, the pizza delivery guy, whoever might need to use a parallel spot like that. And I think that's part of the input that we're hoping to get from this group is if you think we need to incorporate more of that to serve the new uses going into the hospital district or to serve the residents that live there now.
Yeah, certainly a good question, I think. And I would just maybe add that I think parallel parking, it could be appropriate in some areas along First Street here to serve particular uses along First Street, like you just mentioned, that are going to be, redevelopments. But I'm still not clear on what you mean by parallel parking serving the Beeline. I mean, the Beeline is a bicycle and pedestrian trail. And so I'm having trouble understanding how parallel parking would be serving the Beeline Trail.
So I guess it's for somebody who wants to get on the Beeline Trail and they're going to come to First Street to park to make that access.
Okay, so you're envisioning this area as being a kind of park and ride for the Beeline Trail?
I don't know if we need to designate it specifically as that. It's just, again, I saw on the street view, there were a lot of people walking towards the Beeline, and I can't tell you if they were coming from their homes at that time, or it just seems like this appeared to be a place where people were getting on the Beeline a lot.
Yeah,
and it could serve someone who lives too far away to walk to it as a place to park and get on that facility.
Well, presumably this is an example of a street that could be used to help improve access to the Beeline by not having to drive there. I think if people are feeling the need to park right next to the Beeline using this street that we are talking about redesigning, I think we've already kind of failed a bit, don't you think, in terms of if someone doesn't feel safe biking or walking on this very street to even get to the Beeline, and they need to drive there and park right beside the trail, to me, that just seems a bit odd. So I respectfully, I would encourage
people that live 2 or 3 miles away and they have small children and they'd like to walk on the trail, but they don't have that opportunity to live that close to it.
Well, I guess I would say that there are plenty of other places along the Beeline Trail where there already is parking. So I don't think we need to induce more people to drive to the Beeline Trail, especially in the middle of the city.
So let me just quickly weigh in. I appreciate the questions and the comments. I think just generally, from my perspective, if we are providing on-street parking spaces along this corridor, it is to serve the adjacent land uses for parking and loading and delivery needs, as was mentioned. And going back a little bit to your question about traffic calming as well, certainly the city transportation plan identifies some potential means of producing traffic calming, and you touched on horizontal elements, and I would just suggest that there are a number of elements within this project. There are bulb outs at intersections. The median, I would certainly suggest, is an element of traffic calming by narrowing the road. A 10-foot wide drivable surface with curbs on each side is going to calm traffic and certainly would be supported by the transportation plan. So I just wanted to clarify those, and I'd be happy to hear your other questions that you might have.
Okay, sure. So just one or two others. So, this is an ambulance route, as I mentioned, and then, there's also a bit of truck use for Kroger. I mean, was there any consideration about, the fact that those types of uses where there's kind of a lot of emergency vehicles. I mean, I live very close to this project, so I hear ambulances coming all the time. And so presumably there would still be a lot of ambulances in the area. Was there any consideration given to the fact that, maybe the fact that there are ambulances and trucks here, that's not actually that compatible with a shared street where, bikes and pedestrians are sharing the space with cars in large part? I mean, there's no dedicated bike facilities here at all. And so I'm just trying to understand how that is compatible with, frequent ambulances and, large semi trucks coming to and from Kroger.
So this is, I'll take a stab at that, but I'm guessing someone from the city will have to weigh in as well. This was the direction that was given to us by the city. I appreciate your perspective on it. I think part of it is the limited amount of right-of-way that is available and trying to make an improvement without having to go through years potentially of getting property. I think I don't know this for sure because this is just our portion of the project, but the shared use in relationship to the semi-traffic, I don't see a need for semis to be further down on First Street. However, I don't know also exactly what's going to be going in on the hospital site either. There are a lot of plans, but nothing too finite yet to be able to understand that. But there's also Second Street to make those access points for any semi-traffic getting into that property. So I believe that the shared use was to be able to get folks to the D-Line Trail, and from there they would take that route and not necessarily go all the way to college as that shared use.
Okay, my last question is because I really don't want to take up all the time. I mentioned some other folks might want to speak too. So I really hope that, the question can be considered here. I mean, I don't know if any of you have kids, but if you do, and if they're young kids, my question to you would be, would you allow your young child, let's say they're 7 years old or something, would you allow a 7-year-old child to cycle on this street by themselves? And I think the answer for a shared street, the answer's got to be yes, but in this particular case, I think it's a bit borderline, just due to the fact that there's not a lot of traffic calming that I see here, that the design speeds are 15 to 20 miles per hour. I mean, a 7-year-old does not bike that fast. And so I understand that an able-bodied adult, an experienced cyclist could certainly navigate this street quite easily, but I wouldn't be confident in saying that for some children. So please consider the needs of all street users. I mean, you said that at the outset that there was, going to be low traffic speeds, safety in mind, particularly for bikes and pedestrians. And I think that's an excellent starting point, but I don't really see it realized fully in this design. I think there are a lot of missed opportunities for traffic calming to be applied here, horizontal and vertical elements. I respectfully disagree with Mr. Seibert about medians being an effective horizontal traffic calming device in that they don't cause cars to have to move side to side. I mean, if you just drive in a straight line, you can just continue driving as fast as you want. So I'll stop talking now. But I really hope that you can, please consider more effective traffic calming measures for this design, so that we actually get to the point that we want in that this is a nice, calm street for all road users. Thank you.
Thank you for the comments, and I'll use this as a plug for the Google form. It has extensive traffic calming options that we ask that you provide your feedback on and select them. And we've made it multiple choice so we can do ranked choicing with this and be able to really tease out what citizens are looking for with the traffic calming options. And so again, that was put in at the top of the chat to everyone and is also available on the city website for this First Street project. Going for some of the questions, there hasn't been very many additional put into the chat. One was asked about future use of the old hospital site, sufficiently well determined to know the optimal design for First Street should be. The hospital master plan was heavily done with heavy public input. It was voted on and approved through City Council. That is available and links are provided on the First Street website, project website, and so we feel that the master plan is providing us sufficient guidance of how to proceed with the First Street. Oh, someone's asking for the form link again. I will send that one more time. There was a comment regarding the ambulance route. Again, this was IU's owned property. They had a right to build on it. There was no rezoning or anything like that. Emergency services need to be provided in the area, and that is where they selected. You know, I will agree that it is not compatible with the initial vision for this area, possibly, but at the same time, it will exist, and it is something that this design has to account for. A question regarding the fence that is on Kroger's property. Question regarding it blocking line of sight. I guess I will have to take a closer look the next time I ride the P-line through there. I ride this very often, and I guess I haven't found that fence to be an issue for me. But again, I will take a closer look at it. My understanding is that fence is completely on their private property. I would hope that that our traffic calming, the raised intersection at that will provide some additional safety with bicycle and motor vehicle interactions, pedestrian and motor vehicle interactions. But obviously Kroger will be coordinated with for this as we are modifying their dock entrance, and I will happily discuss that with them and see if it's something that they would have any interest in modifying. I am not seeing any additional questions coming through. I will wait just maybe another minute or so, see if anyone's typing and trying to send something through. And if not, we will end the meeting. Again, very much want input and very much would like you to submit it through the Google Forms. There are areas to give written responses, and then also a number of multiple choice and checkbox options. Ask for the checkbox options to, pick the ones that are most important to you so that we can get a better idea of what people are looking for. Selecting all of them will not help us much at determining people's interest.
I think maybe just to emphasize a couple things that Patrick highlighted, and maybe Patrick, while I'm speaking, if you could also just share the project website in the chat. I think there's going to be a lot of useful information available on that website. And there will certainly be, that will be kept active and updated as new information becomes available. But appreciate the questions and the feedback. Certainly invite you to submit your feedback through that Google form, and please talk to your neighbors, share that with anybody that you know in the neighborhood. We're happy to collect that input to help inform our decisions going forward, and just appreciate your time. And I just wanted to add those bits, but thanks everybody.
Thank you.
I've shared the website, and apparently I only shared the Google form to one individual, so I will share that again. And again, the link can be found on the website also. Since no more questions have come in at this time, I want to thank everyone for spending their evening discussing this project with us. We're excited to receive some public input, and look forward to discussing this project again as the design progresses. Thank you.